Imagine this. You're alone in a dark room that isn't really dark. The glow from 1,000 tiny screens pours through the cracks of the world like neon rain, and you can feel it on your skin. Soft, electric, anesthetic. Your thumb moves by itself, a small metronome of desire, feeding you moments measured in milliseconds. Laugh track, jump cut, explosive reveal. Something inside you leans forward, hungry, certain the next swipe will be the one that makes you feel whole. But the next swipe never is. It's beautiful, it's loud, it's almost enough, and then it evaporates like perfume in an empty hallway. You inhale again. You keep inhaling. Why does the scent never become air? You used to think meaning was a mountain to climb. Effort, scars, a view that had to be earned. Now meaning has been packaged into endless trailers of almosts. Stories no longer ask you to live with them. They flash, perform, and vanish, leaving a sugar residue of emotion with no body to nourish. You finish a season and can't name a single sentence that changed you. You laugh, you cry, but nothing rearranges the furniture of your soul. Here is the paradox that unsettles you. The more entertained you are, the more invisible you become to yourself. Infinite choice promises freedom, yet you feel increasingly choreographed, nudged by an algorithm that knows your longings better than you do, but never intends to fulfill them. Is it possible to drown in shallow water? To be overstimulated and underawakened at the same time? You sense it when the credits roll, and the silence afterward feels aggressive, like the moment after a firework, when the night suddenly remembers its own emptiness. You reach for another show, another clip, another game, because the pause is unbearable. What are you avoiding? Boredom, or the unedited mirror inside boredom? Who would you be if no soundtrack told you how to feel? Consider how tired your attention feels, like a muscle worked to failure on trivial weight. When did focus become a relic and distraction a lifestyle? When did the question, what matters, get outsourced to a feed that scrolls faster than your conscience can speak? If meaning requires memory, what happens when experience arrives pre-shredded into fragments that never assemble into a life? You're not naive. You know entertainment isn't evil, but you can't shake the suspicion that something sacred has been bargained away. Wonder traded for spectacle, participation for consumption, depth for volume. And yet you keep watching because the cliffhanger is your own unrest. So ask yourself, if pleasure can be engineered, can purpose be engineered too? If everything is content, what is a life? If the show never ends, when do you begin? Hold that unease, follow it, because the real problem isn't what you watch, it's what watching is quietly doing to the architecture of your mind. And that is where we have to go next. The unease you're feeling isn't a glitch, it's a design. Modern entertainment thrives on a psychological lever that predates screens, the ancient tension between boredom and pain. Schopenhauer called life a pendulum swinging between those poles. Flee pain and you hit boredom. Flee boredom and pain returns in disguise. What the attention economy discovered is a third option. Don't let the pendulum land anywhere. Keep it vibrating with micro-stimulation so quickly that you don't have time to feel either. Your nervous system becomes a tuning fork for novelty. Under the hood, intermittent reinforcement schedules, those casino-grade patterns where rewards arrive unpredictably. Train your thumb to move before you think. Dopamine surges not at satisfaction, but at anticipation. The next swipe is the slot machine lever your brain learned to pull. You don't choose this ritual, it chooses you. The algorithm isn't a villain twirling a mustache. It's a mirror of your past clicks, a mechanical memory shaping your future desires. It doesn't ask who you are, it infers who you'll tolerate being. Carl Jung warned that what you refuse to make conscious controls you. Entertainment offers a glittering sanctuary from the shadow, those disowned parts of you that demand attention, grief that wants a name, unlived potentials that knock at 3 a.m. When the show absorbs your evenings, your shadow waits at the door, patient and undiminished. The more you avoid it, the louder it speaks through restless sleep, vague anxiety, and the strange feeling that your life is happening one room over. Nietzsche peered ahead to the last man, a comfort-addicted creature who avoids great suffering and thus forfeits great meaning. The last man loves safety, a soft bed, an easy laugh. He blinks and says, "We invented happiness," while his muscles of courage and depth atrophy from disuse. Entertainment can make last men of us, not by malice, but by mastery of convenience. Why endure the climb to value when spectacle delivers a counterfeit peak in seconds? Aldous Huxley saw it too. A society pacified not by chains, but by soma. Pleasure so abundant they anesthetize dissent. You don't need a pill. You have an endless carousel calibrated to your temperament. The result isn't tyranny, but compliance. A velvet captivity where comfort persuades you to renounce the hardship that meaning demands. Sartre's bad faith adds another lens. You exist, therefore you must choose, and the weight of choosing terrifies you. It's easier to let the feed choose on your behalf. You outsource authorship and call it relaxation. But the bill arrives later as nausea, a word Sartre used for the vertigo of realizing you've let existence slide past while you occupied yourself with props. Viktor Frankl, treating patients in the ruins of the 20th century, argued that the will to meaning is primary. When people can't locate meaning, they chase pleasure, power, or distraction as substitutes. Modern entertainment is the most efficient substitute ever invented. It performs the gestures of meaning, drama, conflict, catharsis, without demanding you risk anything. The psyche receives the silhouette of significance and mistakes it for the body. Notice the societal machinery intensifying this drift. Metrics, views, likes, watch time convert attention into currency, and platforms optimize for acceleration, not integration. The fastest content wins, even when slowness is where comprehension lives. Culture begins to prize the metabolizable over the memorable. Your narrative identity, the story you tell yourself about who you are, requires reflection and continuity. Yet your days are diced into clips that refuse to cohere. You wake with the sense of having lived many borrowed lives and none of your own. Is entertainment the enemy? Not necessarily. The hidden problem is substitution, the ritual of consuming meaning-shaped stimuli in place of doing meaning-generating acts. It's rehearsal without stage, appetite without meal, echo without voice. Keep following this logic, and something fragile begins to deform. Not just your attention, but your capacity to become someone you would recognize. And that deformation has consequences you can't afford to ignore. What happens when you live for years in the waiting room of the next clip? The consequences don't announce themselves with alarms. They accumulate like dust in the corners of a house you never fully clean. First, your attention. Once a steady beam, frays into confetti. You begin a conversation and feel the itch to abbreviate the human being in front of you into a highlight reel. Depth starts to feel slow, and slowness translates to threat. It's not that you can't focus. It's that your nervous system now treats continuity as a hostile environment. Neurologically, repetition wires reality. The habit of rapid, low-friction intake reshapes your predictive coding, the brain's way of guessing what happens next, so that novelty becomes the default expectation. Life, which changes slowly, and speaks in subtleties can't compete with that expectation. You stand under a sky that is trying to say something profound with clouds and wind, and your inner algorithm whispers, "Next." When the world won't jump cut for you, you feel cheated, as if boredom were a bug in the universe rather than a portal back to yourself. Cognitively, several biases conspire to keep you yoked. Present bias pulls you towards smaller, sooner rewards. The future is a rumor, the feed is a certainty. The hedonic treadmill ensures that whatever once thrilled you becomes baseline, so the dial must crank higher to register as feeling. The availability heuristic convinces you that what you see most often is what matters most, so you overvalue the viral and undervalue the invisible work of character. Meanwhile, variable reward schedules, dopamine's favorite carnival game, train you to tolerate mediocrity in search of intermittent hits. You endure 9 forgettable clips because the 10th lands. The brain remembers the hit and edits out the wasteland. Emotionally, the cost is disguised as numbness. You still laugh and gasp, but the affect is shallow, like light ripples over deep water. Grief arrives and you try to fast forward it. Longing arrives and you mute it with noise. Without time and stillness, emotions never metabolize into meaning. They remain undigested, creating a background ache that looks like fatigue and sounds like "I'm fine." In truth, you're starving on a full stomach. Identity, too, thins out. The self is a narrative woven from commitments kept across time. But a life built from fragments struggles to tolerate vows. Vows to a craft, a person, a calling. Because vows require you to outlast your moods. When your inner attention marketplace rewards what is instantly gratifying, promises begin to feel like bad investments. You become a portfolio of momentary enthusiasms with no anchor asset. Socially, the architecture of connection degrades. You start treating conversations like content, auditioning lines for approval, editing in real time for virality. Silence, which once signaled trust, turns awkward, so relationships lose the space where truth gathers courage. Communities drift from shared practices to shared consumption. Friendships become co-watching rather than co-creating. You inhabit networks, not neighborhoods, everywhere and nowhere at once. Culturally, the commons of meaning erodes. Algorithms maximize engagement, which means outrage and spectacle trend. Nuance, context, and patience recede. Public discourse learns to speak in punches. We grow fluent in reaction and illiterate in reflection. The consequence is not merely polarization. It's an attention ecology hostile to wisdom. And then there is time, the most non-renewable resource you own. The feed demands it in unreceipted micropayments. A minute here, 3 there. A late night hour you pretend was rest. You can't remember where it went because nothing asked enough of you to be memorable. Memory favors effort. Without effort, days smear into each other like wet ink. You feel the urgency now, don't you? Not moral panic, but a precise alarm. If this continues, the capacity to live a meaningful life will atrophy by disuse. Something must change, not by deleting pleasure, but by reordering it under purpose. You can sense a hinge approaching, a way to step out of the waiting room and back into authorship. Hold that sense. The breakthrough is closer than you think, but first you have to consider what rebellion would actually mean. Rebellion doesn't begin with deletion, it begins with devotion. You don't win by waging war on entertainment. You win by pledging allegiance to something larger than it. The first counterintuitive move is not to quit, but to consecrate, to pick one difficult, luminous aim and bind a portion of your life to it. Meaning grows where vows are planted. Start with a ritual of authorship. Before you touch a screen, you write one page, anything, confessions, plans, rough sentences that embarrass you. This is not productivity, it's sovereignty. You are teaching your nervous system a new order. First I speak, then I listen. 10 minutes is enough to tilt the day from passive to active. The page becomes a doorway through which the day must pass. Next, rewire your reward circuit by practicing heavy focus for short, sacred windows. Choose one task that matters and create a 25 to 45-minute sanctuary. Phone in another room, notifications exiled, a visible timer ticking like a metronome of intent. Your mind will buck like an untrained horse for the first minutes, but hold the reins. On the far side of that restlessness waits a quiet joy, the joy of traction. Each session is a small rebellion against the culture of drift. Replace consumption with creation at a 1-to-1 exchange rate. 1 episode watched, write 300 words. 10 clips scrolled, sketch for 10 minutes. Not as punishment, but as alchemy, turning impression into expression. You discover how much of your unease was unlived energy seeking a channel. Recover the ancient arts of attention. Walking without headphones, eating without screens, sitting without fleeing. These are not quaint, they are radical acts in a civilization of noise. If boredom knocks, let it in. Boredom is unmined gold, the preface to original thought. Stay a few minutes longer than is comfortable, and you will feel the mind begin to compose. Curation becomes the shield you wear. Delete the infinite, choose the finite. Subscribe not to everything good, but to a narrow canon aligned with your aim. A handful of books, a few long-form creators who build your courage rather than your cravings. Music that restores rather than distracts. Abundance is not wealth without limit. It is sufficiency with intention. Train with constraints. Artists know that limitations liberate. Decide on arbitrary borders. No screens before sunlight. No videos under 5 minutes. Force depth. Entertainment only after a completed focus session. A Sabbath hour daily where devices are off and analog life resumes. Constraints are scaffolding. They hold you while you build the muscles of choice. Seek comrades, not audiences. Find 1 or 2 people willing to practice depth with you. Co-writing hours, silent reading sessions, shared progress logs. Community stabilizes identity. Vows are harder to betray when witnessed. Replace group chats of commentary with circles of craft. Make "What did you make?" a weekly greeting. Learn from historical dissenters. Marcus Aurelius ran an empire and kept a private notebook to tend his inner empire. Proof that reflection is portable. Václav Havel wrote plays under censorship, turning language itself into resistance. Proof that truth can survive spectacle. Simone Weil insisted on attention as a form of love. Proof that focus is not merely cognitive, but moral. Their rebellion wasn't loud, it was exacting. Forgive yourself quickly and return relentlessly. You will relapse into scrolling. Of course you will. The tactic is not shame, but reset. The moment you notice you've been captured, breathe, stand, touch something physical, a book spine, a doorknob, cold water. Re-enter the day through the body. Begin the smallest meaningful action available. 1 sentence, 1 push-up, 1 email of gratitude. Momentum is born microscopic. Finally, translate all of this into a creed you can carry. I will treat my attention as seed, not confetti. I will seek works that ask something of me. I will entertain myself with making more than with watching. I will prize slowness where understanding lives. Repeat it until it begins to repeat you. Because rebellion is not an event, it is a stance. Hold it, and the world will start to reorganize around the gravity of your intention. You thought rebellion would look like a dramatic renunciation, the bonfire of your subscriptions, the heroic exile from the carnival. But listen closely to the quiet that settles after you choose one meaningful act and complete it. The quiet is not empty. It is dense. In it you can hear a truth that entertainment, by its nature, cannot deliver because it would cancel its own business model. The truth is this: meaning is not something you find. Meaning is the signature you carve into reality when you love something enough to suffer for it. You have been trained to treat life as a theater that must perform for your feelings. The final turn is realizing that your feelings were never the audience. They were the orchestra awaiting a conductor. When you lift the baton, when you take responsibility for arranging your attention around a worthy aim, emotion aligns not by intensity, but by integrity. Joy deepens, grief clarifies, fear becomes a compass pointing toward your next courageous step. What changed? Not the world. The stance from which you meet it. Here is the paradox that resolves the earlier paradox. The more you entertain yourself, the less you participate in your own becoming. But the moment you participate, even clumsily, the need to be entertained loosens its grip. You discover that engagement is a stronger drug than distraction, and that its side effects are dignity, momentum, and a memory you can live inside. The hunger you tried to feed with glitter was always hunger to give. You were starving for your own contribution. Think of the people who altered your inner landscape: a teacher's sentence, a parent's steadfastness, an artist's uncompromised page. None of them aimed to thrill you. They aimed to serve the real. That is the ultimate truth modern entertainment tries, without malice, but with inevitability, to obscure. Reality is not boring when you show up fully. Reality is symphonic when you consent to be a player rather than a spectator. The solo you feared isn't a performance you will be judged on. It's the note only you can add to the chord. So what does meaning feel like on an ordinary Tuesday? It feels like the moment you keep a promise to your future self. And in the keeping, watch a new identity flicker on. It feels like the second draft that fixes one honest paragraph, and through that honesty, tells you who you are. It feels like choosing a slow conversation over a fast clip and realizing that attention is how love spells your name. It feels like showing up to your practice, writing, building, teaching, caring on the day you least want to, and leaving with a quiet pride that spectacle can't counterfeit. Will entertainment still have a place? Of course. Beauty belongs to you. Laughter belongs to you. Rest belongs to you. But they take their rightful seat in a hierarchy crowned by purpose. You do not abolish pleasure. You enthrone it under meaning. You do not renounce the story. You insist that the story asks something real of you and that you answer, stand here, at the edge of the screen's light, and measure the distance between the person you drift into and the person you would choose to become. That distance is not a void. It is a bridge you can build, one deliberate plank at a time. Each plank is a day arranged around devotion, a conversation held without performance, a task finished without applause. And now, the cinema dims, not because the show is over, but because the lights are rising on a different stage, the one you've been absently seated in all along. The audience is gone. There is only you, and the work that will make you unmistakably yourself. Step forward, raise your hands, conduct your life. Let the music begin.